Today we have a treat for us. An old friend and adopted, all of us know, Dr. Don Hines is going to present his project on his mission in Guatemala. And Don, if you'll come at this time and introduce this to us.
So I guess you can all hear me without having to use a microphone. I'm really not afraid of a microphone. I've used it a few times in the past. But it's a pleasure to be here today with you. I know this is a change of pace for you, but I think you're going to get an inspiration about God's work in a foreign land and what's doing to help these children, to educate them and to feed them and clothe them and love them and let them know God. All of these children that Mike and Dottie Clark take care of have been abused, neglected, or abandoned. And they're sent to Casa Aleluya by the courts, but they don't send any money with them. He has to feed them and clothe them and educate them and minister to them and all with donated funds. Let me just tell you, first of all, how Mike got involved in this, and then let me tell you how I got involved, and then we'll go through the program. Mike Clark graduated from Bunkie High School, I think about 1962? 61, okay. 1961. He went off to Northwestern. He got a bachelor and a master's degree in social service. And he worked at Pinecrest. And then while he was working on his master's or completing his master's, he was up at Northwestern one day, and the president came and asked him, said, Mike, the president of the University of Florida is coming today, and so-and-so, one of the members of the faculty, was supposed to pick him up in Alexandria, but he's sick. Would you mind going and picking him up? So Mike went down, he picked him up, and he and the president had a long chat driving back from Alexandria to Natchitoches. And Mike took him back to the airport, and on the way back, he asked Mike, he said, why don't you come to the University of Florida and get your PhD? And he said, oh, I can't afford that. He said, I have a child that has a heart defect, and I have to raise a family. I just can't afford it. He said, well, you know, Louisiana has this program where they'll pay you $500 a month if you'll agree to come back and spend 3 years working for the state. And of course, 50-some years ago, $500 a month was a lot of money. And so Mike took him up on it, and he got his PhD in special education. And of course, he came back to Pinecrest to work, and he and Dottie got married, and Mike was Catholic, and Dottie was Baptist. Her dad was a Baptist preacher in Fayetteville, Arkansas. And both sides of the family resented the fact that they were marrying outside of their religion. And they had a pretty tough time with it. But Dottie's father, who was a Baptist minister, and Mike became close friends, and he was supportive of Mike. And I guess indirectly or directly, this led to Mike being converted to the ministry. He went to theology schools in Dallas and in Lafayette, and he eventually opened a ministry in Lake Charles, had like a little orphanage with it, and he talked on KJUN, he still does every morning, I think at 8 o'clock. Anyhow, he had a friend of his who was a pastor there in Lake Charles, and he kept asking Mike to go on a mission trip to Africa with him. Well, Mike didn't want to go. He said, first of all, it's too far. I'm going to be gone too long, it's too expensive. So he kept putting this guy off. But the guy was persistent. So finally the guy told me, he said, look, I'm going to Guatemala for 4 days. You want to go with me? He figured this would be a wonderful way to get that guy off his back, so he went. And Mike was an early morning riser, and he got up about 4 o'clock and walking the streets of Guatemala City. He saw these kids sleeping in cardboard boxes. He saw them eating out of trash cans, and it really tore his heart out. When he came back, he was telling Dottie about it. He started crying. And Dottie said, when are we going to Guatemala? Well, sure enough, about 3 months later, they left and went to Guatemala with their family. And they had all adopted children by this time. They had 3 children of their own. All three of them had heart defects, were born with heart defects. One lived to 8 years of age. He had some major surgery in Florida when he was down there. Another one lived to be a little over a year old, and another one was born premature and died at birth. But he had, I think, 5 adopted children when they went. But let me fast forward to how I got involved. Mike came back, I guess it was in 2011. If it was, he graduated in '61. It was for the 50th class reunion. And he spoke at the Assembly of God Church in Lone Pond while he was here. And some of his classmates went to hear him, and they were inspired by what he said, and so they went down to Guatemala, and they served for a week or two at the mission and helping them in various undertakings. And they came back and spoke to the Rotary Club in Bunkie, and the Bunkie Record had a front page, full page article about their trip down there and some pictures and so forth. And I was pretty impressed by what was going on. And I was driving down the road one day, I started thinking, you know, what does he do for medical care for these 400 kids? And so I finally got his cell phone and I called him, and he was pretty proud. He told me he had 3 nurses, and they had a little clinic, and they would see patients. And I said, well, what do you do with the ones that are beyond the capability of the nurse? And he said, well, one of the nurses has to take them into town, and it's about 20 miles away, but it's an all-day affair. It's about like, I guess, people who used to go to Huey Long Hospital or to LSU Shreveport or New Orleans. You know, it takes at least a day to be seen and your needs taken care of. And so I thanked him. I also asked him, did he have the internet? He said, yeah. So I checked with a friend of mine at LSU, and I said, you know, we're doing telemedicine where a patient in Bunkie can be seen by a heart specialist in Shreveport via telemedicine without either one of them having to leave their locality. If they had the internet in Guatemala, could we see a patient in Louisiana? And he said, well, sir. And so anyhow, I'm riding down and I started adding this all up. And I got to about $200,000, and I got this big knot in my stomach. And then I got to thinking, you know, if Mike and Dottie Clark and 5 adopted children can leave Lake Charles in a pickup truck now, not a van, but a pickup truck, and drive to Guatemala with less than $2,000 in their pocket, no visible means of support, and could not speak Spanish, going down there with the idea that he was going to build a group home for about 25 kids. If they could do that, I ought to could raise the necessary money to do this. And thanks to this church and many of you and this community and a lot of civic clubs, that we've surpassed that $200,000, and we've improved the medical care tremendously by using telemedicine. We had a few divine interventions in this, and I'll tell you about some of them. I'm hoping one of them is that I can operate this. I think I'm going backwards. Might have to go down there and do it. Here we go. All right. As you know, in the bulletin, you have this picture of these 400 kids, and as you can see on the front row there's some babies that they're holding. They drop them off. They've had a couple with umbilical cords intact that they dropped at the front gate. And then, of course, they, you know, stabilize them, then they take them into town to the court, to the hospital, and then the court, and get court approval to keep them. This is the group from Georgia that we came down to help me assemble the telemedicine card. And that was the first divine intervention. I went to Acadian Ambulance and asked for one of those offshore, kind of little rinky-dink, $12,000 telemedicine cards. And unfortunately, or fortunately, I guess it was, that Avoyles Parish and Acadian Ambulance was in a lawsuit. And the president wasn't real interested in helping anybody in this parish at that time. So I called a lady that I had met and actually had asked to come speak at a Rural Health Conference in Louisiana because I was so impressed with her. Paula Guy, and I asked Paula if she knew anybody that I could buy a telemedicine card at a discounted price from. And she said, what do you want it for? And I told her about the mission and about the work, and she said, well, no, I really don't know anybody that'll sell you one at a discounted price, but I know somebody that'll give you one, and somebody will go down and set it up for you. And that in itself was a blessing. If I'd have gotten that little offshore thing, I'd have been flying by the seat of my pants. Whereas I have access to an organization that did 170,000 telemedicine consults in the state of Georgia through their statewide network. And in fact, we just came back Monday night with the x-ray equipment and the dermatology equipment that I took down there. Paula sent 2 people to set it up. I bought the program from her for $4,000, but I'm sure their expenses was even more than that. She said she wanted it done right and she wanted it set up. This is the telemedicine suite, and you see the LSU Tiger was on the left. Well, there was nothing on the right. They wanted to put a Georgia Bulldog picture there. And I had to use my 36 years of political experience to be able to get their logo on there. But anyhow, we got them to put their logo, and they changed it. And that's setting up, that's Dr. Jeff Kessler, who's the Chief Operating Officer. This telemedicine cart, one of the finest, and it's state-of-the-art. And the kids there at Casa were so anxious to see it in operation, and actually they had a conference with Waycross, Georgia was the last slide that I keep moving around. This is Paula, the tall lady in the background is Paula Guy, and showing these kids the cart. That's Paula with a couple. When you walk through Casa, these kids come up and hug you. They're all smiling, they're all happy. It's a change of life experience to be there and to see them and to interact with them and how appreciative they are of everything. Mike Clark says the difference between a Guatemalan teenager and an American teenager is a Guatemalan teenager is appreciative, and I think so. This is them playing out on the playground, and I've been there 4 or 5 times, and I've never seen a fight. I mean, they're all playing, they're all happy, they all enjoying the situation. This is CNN Central America, who came and interviewed Jeff Kessler and I. Of course, we had an interpreter sitting between us. But they interviewed us, and we're anxious to try to get telemedicine in Central America. That's just some more shots of the kids. But this is in the clinic, Nurse Celia and the patient, and then over at the other desk is Maria. Celia speaks English. Celia came to Casa at age 13 with her 2 sisters. They'd been living in a cave. They were abandoned. She was working at a Korean sweatshop. I think she was making 15 cents an hour or something. And she brought her 2 sisters to Mike and asked would he take them in and educate them. She said, I can pay for their food, but I can't pay for their education. Well, he said, would you like an education? She said, oh yeah, but I can't afford it. He said, come on in. And so he took them in, and Celia had never been to school. She took 2 grades every year until she caught up with her peers. Finished almost at the top of her class, went to nursing school, and was an honor student there. And on graduation, she was offered a big job at a large hospital in Guatemala City, but she chose to come back and work for Mike. As you see the otoscope and ophthalmoscope and the blood pressure cuff on the wall behind Celia, that was all stuff that we sent down with our first shipment. They had some 1940 equipment in the clinic prior to our intervention. Wes Hall, who's chairman of the board, went down and did an inventory for me and sent it what they needed, and we tried to stock it. This is the CBC machine. This is the second divine intervention. This machine right there cost $12,000. I was trying to save money. I bought a refurbished machine, a different kind, for $3,000. And when I got it and started working with it, I realized this is too complicated for a non-medical person or a nurse who's not trained as a medical technician to operate, because you had to run controlled substances and so forth. So we'd barely taken it out of the box. I mean, it hadn't been used. I called the guy that I bought it from in Miami, and he said, I'll give you $1,500. I said, man, this is for a mission. How about $2,000 anyhow? No, $1,500. So we shipped it by the post office, and I insured it for $3,000. And the good Lord went in and damaged it en route. The only thing he did was he didn't help the post office any. I understand very well why they lost $18 billion last year. They, and if any of you are postal employees, I apologize, but they wanted me to come to Miami and bring the broken machine to their office so they could give it to me. Well, fortunately, my friend Rodney Alexander was congressman, and I called Rodney, and he called the Postmaster General, and they assigned somebody in New Orleans. And these two ladies in New Orleans told me, he said, we're going to get your money. One of them actually had to go to Miami to get it. But we got $3,042, $42 in interest back. And then I bought this machine, which you put a little bit of blood in a pipette, stick it in, turn the machine on, in about 3 minutes you get a result. That is our chemistry machine. That little handheld device is another $12,000 piece of equipment. It does blood sugars, kidney function studies, potassium, sodium, calcium, and hemoglobin and hematocrit also. And but the good thing about this one is you put a cc of blood in a little cassette. Stick the cassette. That's what I'm doing there, putting that cassette in. And in 3 minutes, you have a result, and you press a button and it prints it out. So it's worked very well. This is a dental, and you can't see it real well. It's similar to the one that I bought from Dr. LaPrairie. We shipped it down there after we had made our major shipment. The first shipment was very uneventful. A mission group in Mississippi had found a CAT scan, and they donated it to a Guatemalan doctor who lived next to the hospital, with the understanding that he would let the hospital use it, charge them a fee, and take that money and use it for mission work. And he was agreeable. And they had a container that was 20 feet long, 8 feet wide, and 8 feet tall. I mean, a huge thing. And they only used a third of it, and they had some furniture for a missionary in there with the CAT scan. So we had the other 2/3. So we sent 47 boxes, telemedicine cart, and that CBC machine down there. Went through customs in one day because it was going to a national, and we paid $500 duty on it. The dental x-ray was a little different. We sent it down there to Casa. It stayed in customs for 10 months. I had to go to the dean of the medical school to get him to make him release it, and I'll show you his picture in a minute. But he told me, he said, this is not the last call I'm making. I'm going to call somebody higher up if y'all don't release that dental equipment. That was on a Friday. Monday morning, customs called Casa and said, we got this piece of equipment sitting our way, would y'all come get it? And I think we paid $500 or something duty for it. But anyhow, now this is the x-ray machine that we just took down there, portable machine. That and the film reader was turned out to be about a $40,000 project. The Rotary Club in Fayetteville, Arkansas donated $18,000 to that project, and the Rotary Club in Alexandria gave me 10, the Baptist Church in Bunkie gave me some 6,000, I believe, in different donations. But this is the film that it shows up. It's a digital film. That film can be sent anywhere in the world for radiologists to read it. While we were setting this piece of equipment up, we took 3 x-rays of 3 kids that were hurt playing. A little girl had a fractured finger. The little boy had a sprained wrist, but you couldn't tell whether it was broken or not, so he'd had to go into town and have an x-ray. And the third one had a broken collarbone. So we put it to use right away. It's going to be a tremendous asset. Monica Orman, that works in x-ray at Bunkie General, went down with me to teach them how to take x-rays and how to send them. And the 2 people from Georgia, first of all, not only did they set this up, but they set up a computer program for dermatology, And also, they brought about $4,000 worth of equipment, including a new computer, to upgrade the telemedicine card. This is all donated by Georgia. And so anyhow, I think we have a state-of-the-art equipment there now that in fact, the radiologists here in Bunkie and Bill Platt are going to read these films for us on a regular basis and give us a report. This is a pediatrician that we've hired to work on Saturdays. He comes every Saturday for 8 hours. I pay him $500 a month, believe it or not. And I'm working with the 4 civic clubs. The LeCount Rotary Club has already paid for 1/4 of his salary. The Lions Club in Bunkie met with them, and I think they're going to pay. The Bunkie Rotary Club, it's on their agenda, and then the Marksville Rotary Club will each put up $1,500 and pay the salary of this pediatrician. He is developing a chart on every child so that we'll have the immunization record, we'll have all their record. We're looking about how to make a picture of their x-rays and include it in our chart. It might be a little bit, might be a little while before that happens. So, but anyhow, this is just some kids that on the street, in the campus there that just came and wanted to take their picture with you and hug up. There's Louis Laborde from Cockport who went down on our first trip. This is Paula and Jeff and a guy, Nathan Lincolnfelter. Nathan is the head of Alamo Telephone in Atlanta. He's going to Haiti and do the same thing. And he wanted to come down and see how we did it so he wouldn't have to reinvent the wheel. And that's my specials here. This is 4 of the 5 kids that were on dialysis. These children have kidney failure, no hope for a transplant. So they come into Casa to die. But then in the interim, to be made comfortable, to be fed, and to be loved, and cared for, and get to know God. One of them was at the hospital at the time, so I missed her, but I was able to go to the hospital. The nephrologist invited me the next day. Roosevelt Hospital, I guess it's named after Teddy Roosevelt. I never found out, but Roosevelt Hospital, and brought her little present. This was some dolls that I gave them, and this is 4 of them again. Every time I go, one or different ones in the hospital. And that's Aroldo. Aroldo is also a resident of Casa who came back and got his RN degree. And Aroldo is now just finishing his practicum for a dialysis technician. And he's gonna head up the little dialysis unit. Mike calls it a critical care hospital. It's really a dormitory that he's building. But he's going to house about 36 kids, either those on dialysis or those who have had a transplant, but the living conditions in their home are not satisfactory for them to go back home. If they have like a dirt floor, the doctors won't let them go home. In one case, they were able to raise some money and put a concrete floor in the house of a little girl named Karen. And Karen is, I think, going home next month. This is Louis, and he's getting his dialysis. If you can see the bag on the table and the machine, and they're using peritoneal dialysis where they flush the impurities out of the body through the abdominal cavity. The old equipment Mike had, these kids had to go 4 times a day. He was raising money, and fortunately with some of the money that I'd raised, we were able to send him $12,000 to kick him off and get some new machines. So they just take their dialysis at night. And in other words, about 5 o'clock, 5:30 in the afternoon after they eat supper, they take their dialysis till 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, whatever time it takes. And then they can play and go to school and everything else and live a normal life, which has been a blessing to them. There's a little girl that's taking her dialysis in the bedside, and you see all her goodies up above. And I brought them all some purse with some money in it, and the boys with a billfold and the LSU cap or something. And I don't think you can see it, but this is some little thank you notes, which was priceless that they gave me. And Jose there had an American flag and an American eagle, and he was just tickled to death that he was able to draw that and give that to me. This is Dr. Federico Alfaro, who is a Houston-trained cardiologist, who's dean of the medical school there, and he's been a big friend of ours and working with us on a couple of projects. And hopefully one day we'll get them involved in the care of the kids in Guatemala. Just showing him the electronic stethoscope that, in fact, pediatricians from Children's Hospital in New Orleans was seeing the kids. The pediatrician went on sick leave. She decided not to come back. In the 6-week interval, I was able to see patients from my office in Bunker using this laptop and that electronic stethoscope. And they have the thing to look in the ear and the throat and a dermatology camera on the other end. And then the stethoscope, they put it on the patient's chest. The nurse presenter hears it there, and I hear it here in Bunker, wherever you might be. So it's a tremendous tool in treating patients. The guy next to me is Dr. Liu. Dr. Liu is a nephrologist, and he and Mike have become very close friends, and he's involved in helping Mike set up this dialysis unit. And I don't even know if he might move his office out to Casa later on. I know that the pediatric department was taking a lot of his space at the hospital, and he threatened to leave, and I think they relinquished, and he's back doing what he wants to do, where he wants to be. But if worse comes to worse, I think he's going to move out to Casa. Now this picture, my next to the last slide, if you get nervous, I'm watching the clock. I know Courtney's going to talk in just a second. But this tells you what telemedicine is all about. All I've said, this picture tells you more than that. Maria, Celia sits next to me. Maria's in the background holding the baby. That's a 14-year-old mother on my right, over my right shoulder. The court sent her there because the stepfather was sexually abusing her, and she had a 2-year-old child and this 5-month-old child who the stepfather was the father of. This child tested positive for hepatitis. And 5-month-old, I figured that was a little bit above and beyond my expertise. So through my friends in Georgia, I was able to get a pediatric infectious disease specialist at the Center for Communicable Disease in Atlanta, Georgia, to examine this child and make recommendations. And I can't really see, but that's a consult taking place. But here is a 5-month-old indigent, displaced child in the remote mountains of Guatemala having access to some of the best medical care in the world. And that's what telemedicine is all about. That's why I've been working to try to put it in rural hospitals here in Central and North Louisiana, and we just got a grant. We're going to do 5 hospitals in South Louisiana starting May the 11th. And so that patients in rural areas or remote areas can have access to specialist care without having to leave. And certainly nursing homes, prisons, both of them operate the same. You have to have a van to send the patient. You have to have a caretaker with them and all that, rather than moving them and having a caretaker in a van and driving to Shreveport and spending all day. You roll them down the hall and they're examined by a specialist, and in 30 minutes they're back in their bed. That's kind of the end of my presentation. The thing I want to tell you is that on September 13th, and I'll remind you again, that Mike and Dottie Clark and Josue, who is a young boy that the people from Georgia brought him to Georgia. They trained him for 2 weeks on how to work with telemedicine. They've had him back once, and he's going back next week for another 1-week training course. Josue is also a good speaker, and he's going to be the voice and the face of Casa in the States when Mike retires. Well, I've invited him to come to Bunkie on September 13th, which is a Sunday night, and speak, and we'll let you know and ask you to come and join with us. That's my story, and I'll stick with it. But, you know, it's been a great experience for me, taking care of those kids. And Courtney, you want to come on up? Taking care of those kids and working with Mike and improving the facilities that we have. And I just think Courtney is going to get a tremendous blessing by being there and working with the children and doing her mission work.